All right, episode 13, the luckiest of all the episodes. Winded City Countdown, Scott Sternal with Ben Russo and Matt Urich. I can't believe we're firmly in the double digits, gentlemen. We are
Yeah.
there, and we're just going to keep them coming. We are only 87 away from the magical 100.
We're getting there. We're getting there, fellas. When that happens, we'll get like championship rings or something.
T-shirts. You gotta get T-shirts.
All right, T-shirts.
Yeah, we'll maybe let's tentatively plan to do episode 100, all of us in the same room.
All right, sign me up. I'm down.
All right, we'll do it. We'll be together for episode 100. Maybe we'll invite people to watch the live feed for that one. Maybe we'll have enough listeners by episode 100. But for now, to our loyal listeners, we're going to talk some baseball this week because it's in the air. You know, it's like love. It's in the air. Baseball's in the air. That fresh cut grass is around. It's good, guys. It is baseball time, you know? Ben, this is one you love this time of year. I know that.
Well, it's baseball. Who doesn't love baseball?
Communist. But even I think they even like baseball.
Yeah, I don't know if they have a World Baseball Classic team or not. So
I don't think so. I don't think they're involved in that at all. So I don't know. Whatever. So baseball. We're going to talk the top 5 most important players on both sides of town. So instead of a straight 10, we are going to have 5 Cubs, 5 Sox. So we'll do the number 5 White Sox, the number 5 Cub, the number 4 White Sox, the number 4 Cub, and we'll bounce back and forth from these lists. But I think it's important that we kind of talk about the expectations for these teams and how these players that we're about to talk about fit into that. So, Matt, I'll start with you. What's the expectation for the Cubs this year?
Well, I think certainly after last year, everything they did, the 96 wins, correct? Was it 96?
97.
97. So 97 wins. You have a handful of rookies come in. You know, the Cubs add 3 big names in Lackey, Hayward, and Zobrist this offseason. So I think the expectations are through the roof. It seems as if it's a World Series or bust almost sort of mentality to an extent for some people. So I think expectations are high. And
Uh-oh. Did we lose Matt?
Can you hear me?
Yep.
Oh, yeah. We didn't hear the end of that. So what's the expectation?
Sorry, I thought my mic was going out. No, I'm just saying that the expectation from many fans is that a World Series without a World Series would be a disappointment. But I think if you temper your expectations, I mean, this team is still very young. So, but I think if they don't make the playoffs, that's obviously a huge disappointment.
For sure. And Ben, what is the expectation on the South side?
I mean, at this point, I think it depends which set of fans you talk to. I think the expectation needs to be playoffs, and I think they're certainly in a division where they can absolutely win. But at the same time, it's something I've said all along, and I've talked to people about is, you know, I feel like they made good moves. I feel like they just may have forgot to make one move. I feel like they're missing something to kind of put them over the top. But you know, I think at this point it's a lot of let's hope the guys that they signed in the previous offseason kind of turn it around a little bit, and then obviously adding Frazier, and you know, hopefully, you know, some of these guys are taking a chance on, like Austin Jackson, Jimmy Rollins, Matt Latos. You know, they stick and have some sort of contribution, but you know, let's not act like they're playing in the toughest division in Major League Baseball. That's a winnable division, and they certainly have the pieces in place. I think competing for some sort of playoff, whether it's the wild card of the division, is certainly an expectation they should be looking for.
All right, so without further ado, let's get to the list. And number 5 for the White Sox is one Jose Abreu. Came in a couple seasons ago, swings a great bat, still swinging a great bat, and he's really, you know, it feels a bit like as he goes, the team's going to go. You know, if he's slumping, the team's going to slump. If he's great, team's going to be great. They need him to be the superstar that he is. If there's You're not making the postseason if Jose Abreu is not your best player, it feels like. Is that fair to say, Matt?
I would agree. And you look at what he did his rookie season. He wins Rookie of the Year in 2014. He hits 36 home runs, 107 RBIs, bats 317. Had a very, very, very good rookie year. And last year, he played again. He had 30 home runs, over 100 RBIs. He batted 290, but I think people looked at that and thought it was a bit of a disappointment. But I think if you see him as, people had to understand he was a 27-year-old rookie, and is last year more of what he was? Maybe a slightly worse hitter than what you saw his rookie year. I'm not sure, but I'm with you. I think that this White Sox team is going to go as far as Jose Abreu takes them. I think he should be the key to this team's sort of. I always hate the momentum word thing, but I think as he goes, this team goes. And I'm putting a lot of high praise on him right now, but he's only our number 5 on this list. But he's a big part of what they do, and they're going to need to see that consistency from him again this year.
What do you got, Ben? What do you got on Jose Abreu?
Yeah, I mean, coming at number 5, I think is fair because I think he might be, to me at least, and again, outsider opinion. I'm not a White Sox fan, but outsider opinion. I think that's the one guy that I would say I'm probably least worried about. But at the same time, he is probably your 3-4 hitter, one of the two there. I'm guessing third, probably ahead of Frazier, but. I mean, this is your middle of the order guy. This is the guy that you're going to be expecting, when somebody's on base in front of him to drive him in or to keep a rally going. So there's going to be a lot depending on him. I think last year to me seems like that's like, that was what he did was with basically no protection in the lineup, and he still had a pretty damn good year. So, you get a better hitter like Todd Frazier behind him, a little more protection. He's going to see a few more pitches. No reason to think he's not going to come back to that 2014 season or somewhere in between the two, which, again, turns you into an all-star and MVP candidate. So,
yeah, if he's somewhere in between, he's going to hit 300 with 33 home runs and over 100 RBI again. So he'll be just fine if that's where he ends up. All right. Let's flip over to the north side of town, and we're going to talk about the big free agent signing for the Cubs this winter, Jason Heyward. And I had him on my list because I think it's really important that Cubs fans' expectations of what Jason Heyward is are not messed up with what they think they should be, right? And as long as he's supposed to be what he is, the Cubs have a hell of a player in right field at Wrigley Field for hopefully 155 games this year. If the chatter starts, where are the home runs? Why is he not hitting over 300? If that chatter starts and it gets into Jason Heyward's head, which there's no reason to believe it will, that's the only way I see that being an issue for this team. Ben, your thoughts on Mr. Heyward?
Yeah, I think the only reason I had him on the list is like even if you understand why he was brought in, like what you don't want is like regressions in the areas we think that he is very consistent. I mean, he can't come in and strike out 150 times. He has to play solid defense. He hasn't really played. Say what you want, but the Cubs are still going to play a fair amount of like afternoon day games. Playing right field with the sun in your eyes is a lot different than playing right field, in any ballpark. It's not that Wrigley Field's a tough place to play as far as like the size of their outfield. It's not a lot of ground he's covering, but it's a different atmosphere playing during the day and playing at night. So it's those things that I'm more focused on. I mean, as I said before, you're gonna hear chatter about why isn't this guy hitting 350 with 50 home runs and 150 RBI? Because that's what casual fans want to see. They want to see those Triple Crown numbers. I understand what he's going to do at the plate, but it's those things like moving a runner over, smart base running, good defense. He has to do those things for the Cubs to succeed, because that, at the end of the day, that's what their downfall was, and that's why you brought a Jason Heyward and a Ben Zobrist in. So, I understand what the Cubs are going to be expecting from him, and I just think that as long as he can do those things, and he has to do those things to prove his value to why the Cubs gave him such a massive contract.
Yeah, I'm with Ben on that. And the thing is, whether or not, and we don't know enough about Jason Hayward, really, the person or anything. Does he get? Is he a guy? I guess the reason he's on my list is, am I worried that he's going to struggle with living up to the contract? I don't think so. But there's no way of really knowing that. But that's the reason why I have on my list. And we've touched on it before. Obviously, the fan expectations of what they think he's going to be in comparison to what he truly is as a player. I think that might take people a little bit to get used to. But yeah, for me, the reason why he's on that is just, does he get bogged down by the fact that he is, this whatever. I don't even remember how big that contract was that he signed, but
8 years, $184 million, I believe.
Yeah. So is it one of those things that, does he get inside his own head with that? I don't think so. But then again, I don't know enough about Jason Hayward, the person, to know that until we see him out on the field.
Very good. So Jason Hayward, important to the Cubs' success. We'll see how he handles the expectations and his first time in a true major market. So we'll see how he handles that and the expectations that come with it. Number 4 on the south side. First of 2 guys that we're gonna dig into the bat of last year, Adam Eaton. A guy that they brought in expecting a lot out of, and not so much. Ben?
I think Adam Eaton, what you need to focus on, and it's going to be kind of a running theme with a couple of the White Sox guys, is which Adam Eaton are you getting? Are you getting first half Adam Eaton, or are you getting second half Adam Eaton? I mean, the splits are unbelievable. So first half last year, Adam Eaton hits 245 with a 309 on base percentage, a 383 slugging for a 692 OPS. Second half, 335, 418, 486, a 904 OPS.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I mean, if he has those second half numbers, I mean, you're not only talking, how good the Sox are going to be. I mean, you're talking, I'm not going to sit here and say he's an MVP, but I mean, those are some pretty gaudy numbers for a leadoff.
You could, though.
Yeah, I agree, but at the same time, if you're getting in the middle there, I mean, how much better are the Sox going to be with an Adam Eaton who's, hitting, 300 with, a 350 on base and you don't necessarily need the slugging from him. It's obviously going to help, but I mean, just unbelievable. I mean, just another thing. I mean, he hit his BABIP was a 412. So getting the ball in play, he's getting on base. I mean, it's just it's unbelievable what he did in the second half, and I think that's a key. Is I mean, I think everybody would love their leadoff hitter to hit 335 with a 418 on base, but what's a realistic number that he can hit? Anything above, slightly below or above what he did in the first half, he's going to make the difference in the world. And I mean, now he's switching positions. He's going to go, I believe he's going to go to right field predominantly with Austin Jackson coming in. So, he wasn't a terrible outfielder, but he wasn't a great outfielder, so you can kind of hide it a little bit more in right field. I'm curious how his arm will play out there. But, I mean, I think he's as big a key as any, just because which Adam Eaton are you going to get? I mean, that's a huge difference to me. And, I mean, if he's anywhere near what he's capable of doing, he's going to make a huge impact. I mean, for as bad as everybody says, I mean, he finished just under a 4 WAR. I mean, 2014 he had a 5.2 WAR. So if he gets back to that player, absolutely, I think he's going to make all the difference in the world for that team.
Well, and I want to really quick, Ben. You talked. You don't want to say MVP. Go ahead and say MVP, because a 418 on base would be 5th in the league, ahead of these guys: Mike Trout, Andrew McCutchen, Anthony Rizzo, Michael Brantley,
Rizzo.
Sorry, I got the nasal thing going here. Prince Fielder, Jose Bautista.
Rizzo, my nizzle.
There it is. So, but I mean, those are the guys he's ahead of.
Yeah, but he's not going to have the offensive numbers that are going to. I mean, you don't win an MVP for on base percentage, but
no. But then his batting average as well.
But he's not going to hit 30 homers and drive in 100 runs. So
this is true, but. You know what?
Again, you get
the nerds involved.
But here's what happens. If Adam Eaton does that for a half or for a full season, what are Jose Abreu's numbers going to be? And that's where you're talking MVP.
For sure. Matt, go ahead, jump in.
I was just going to say there's a really good article on ESPN.com by Christina Carl talking about how Adam Eaton is this leadoff guy, but is he good enough to take that next step? And it's a really good. I'm not going to go through everything with everybody, but if you want to check it out, it's on ESPN.com. It's really delves into more of the specifics and how he could parlay, that good half he had into becoming, more than just a leadoff guy, into becoming like an actual full-blown like star baseball player.
And I think one of the things he has to improve on, which I hope most Sox fans would agree with, is base running. He's got to be smarter on the base paths. I mean, the guy is notorious for running himself into outs. At least the times I've watched him. I mean, just I don't know if he's. Again, I can't sit here and tell you if he was running through stop signs or not, but just he's got to be smarter on the base paths. The team in general has to be, but I mean, this is your guy who's supposed to be stealing bases, and he's your quick guy who gets on base and gets moved over. He can't be getting thrown out or trying to stretch that single into a double and getting thrown out at second, or a lazy fly ball trying to get from second to home. Like, don't run yourself into outs.
Yeah.
And
just needs to be a bit more conservative.
You just saw that too much with him. So if he improves there, he stays consistent at the plate. Again, like I just think he could make all the difference in the world to that lineup.
For sure. All right, let's go back over to the north side now, and we're going to do another free agent signing for them. John Lackey. And the big question mark with John Lackey is he's 37. If the Cubs make a deep run, he'll turn 38 in the middle of that deep run. And it'd have to be a really deep run, so fingers crossed, right? But, you're seeing a guy whose numbers are okay. They're really good last year, but you're talking about a guy who is trending upward
at 36 years old.
At 37 years old. I mean, there's some nerves there for me. Matt, John Lackey, why is he our fourth most important guy for the Cubs?
He's the fourth most important guy because of what the Cubs have at the top of their lineup, essentially, or their rotation. I mean, with Jake Arrieta, coming off a Cy Young award-winning year, John Lester, who's coming off of a down year, quote unquote, by some people's standards, but it's pretty in line with what he's done in his career. And you saw what the Cubs struggled. Jason Hamill struggled. He was okay to start the year, and then he really went downhill. Kyle Hendricks had his ups and downs, and that really came to fruition once the Cubs got into the playoffs. And they struggled in some of those games, and they had those bullpen games and things like that. So the Cubs' hope is that John Lackey can come in, solidify that third spot, in the middle of the rotation. But I'm with you, Scott. He's at this point where he has the best year of his career. He has a 2.77 ERA last year at 36 years old. That's amazing. Like, that's to have that good of a year at that age is pretty remarkable, and that's why there's still question marks on this. Is Lackey worth the money they gave him? Is he worth the 2 years, $32 million? Because you don't know exactly what he is. Is he the guy that had the 2.77 ERA last year, or is he the guy with the career career 3.92 ERA? So he fills a need, but the questions are there because you're not sure if his arm can withstand a full season, or if he could withstand and continue to put up those solid numbers.
Ben, your thoughts on John Lackey and his importance?
Again, I think you're talking about shoring up a position that the Cubs so desperately lacked last year, and again was a contributing factor to why the dream run ended. I mean, I don't want to say that you can hide pitching in the regular season, but you can kind of hide pitching in the regular season. When you get down to it, the playoffs, it came down to the Mets had 3 or 4 guys they could throw at us, and the Cubs had 2, and you had absolutely zero margin of error from your 2 good starting pitchers. Because you look at the Mets, if one of their guys had a bad game, if Harvey struggled, you still have Syndergaard, you still have Matt, you still have DeGrom, who could come in and throw a complete game shutout. Whereas the Cubs, if Arrieta struggled, you have Lester, but then who's going to make up that Arrieta start? It wasn't Hendricks, it wasn't Hamill. So now you're banking on Lackey, who say what you want, he had a 2.77 ERA. That's great, but his FIP was a 3.57, so significantly higher. I mean, almost a full run higher. So, I mean, that's the kind of stuff you have to look out for. And again, I wasn't a huge Lackey fan. I mean, I hate him as a person. I think he's annoying, but whatever. I mean, if he can come in and, even his career average, that 3.9, 3.8, I mean, if he's slightly less than that, I think that's a win. I think you're shoring up a very difficult spot in your rotation. I just think you need him for the playoffs more than anything. Keep him healthy for the regular season. Hopefully he can come in the postseason and, again, shore that up so those, you can get 3 quality starters going against, another, like a team like the Mets again or something like that, hopefully to duel with them. But I think the Cubs are in good enough position where, it was only a 2-year deal, and they're at the position now where they're at the deadline where they can possibly add an arm if needed. But I think Lackey's going to be huge for the postseason more than anything.
I have to imagine, though, that the Cubs are thinking they still want Hamill to be their third best pitcher. Maybe he's not their number 3.
But the third on statistically all that stuff, their third best guy.
Right, and
I would argue they might want Hendricks there, but
I don't know. I think it's more realistic. You've seen good halves of seasons from Hamill. Now, if they could just find a way to, again, I mean, going back to Adam Eaton, right? Adam Eaton, if you could get second half Adam Eaton, well, if the Cubs would have had first half Jason Hamill in the second half instead of the first half, I mean, holy smokes, right? Now you're going.
You might have won the division.
You might win the division, and that Mets series. I mean, I have to.
You weren't winning that Mets series because
but it definitely felt though after Game 1 that the climb was going to be huge, and then
you
after
had no
Lester
margin of error.
Right, and then Lester loses Game 2, and it's like, cool. Jason Hamill's pitching. Did he even pitch Game 3, or did he pitch Game 4?
I remember he only made did he even make it an inning?
Right, but that's
an inning.
But you just knew after you lost Game 2, the climb was going to be that much greater because you just didn't have even an average guy at that point.
Yeah, so. I think you just look at Lackey, and he had a good strong stretch in Anaheim, but then he's the ultimate up and down guy. I mean, some of the seasons he had, I mean, in Boston, his first season he had a 4.4 ERA and then a 6.4 ERA. So I mean, things can get bad with him quickly. I mean, let's not pretend like he was the most dominant pitcher in the world. He was always an innings eater, and I guess that's kind of what you want. I mean, if you can get 200 innings from him, I mean, that's a win in and of itself. But he's never been a guy who's going to come in and, I mean, this 2.77 ERA is completely off the map for him. I mean, it's his best season by far.
I mean, no other season even comes close.
I mean, he had the 3.01 in 07, but that was it.
All right, let's move along. Let's go back to the south side again. Melky Cabrera is our number 3 guy, and again, signed last year. And I remember when they signed him, I was like, that feels like a good signing. And just, he fell right in. And, I don't want to rip on Cabrera or Eaton too much because it's not as though they were the only 2 guys that slumped terribly in that first half of the Sox. I mean, the Sox were, excuse me.
It was that whole team that really struggled in the first half. I mean, yeah, like you said, not to really pick on Cabrera and Eaton here, but the 2 players still hold a lot of significance to this upcoming season.
Right, they really do. So, but Melky Cabrera, I liked I liked the signing when they brought him in. I want to see him work out for the Sox because we're talking about the Sox making the playoffs.
Yeah, and the second half split again, just dramatically better in the second half than the first half. I think he's a guy that needs to slot in that, I guess possibly 2, but I'm thinking probably like 5 would be better for him. Again, I forget what I was watching, who I was reading. I mean, if Melky Cabrera is on, this is a guy that, he's not going to hit, 20, 30 home runs, but this is another guy who can compete for a batting title. I mean, you go back to his year in San Francisco before going to Toronto, he hit 346. Granted it was only 113 games, but it was still 500 plus plate appearances. I'm not saying he's going to go back in time to when he was 27 and hit 346, but this is a guy who should hit 300, get an on base around 350, and that's what you're looking for, is that kind of consistency up and down the lineup that's going to get you, runs. This is a team that finished last place in the American League in runs, so these are the kind of guys you need to step up. And again, just like Eaton, I think you need consistency from Cabrera, and that's going to make your team that much better.
Yeah, and Cabrera's not. He's not a power hitter. That's not his game. He's got, he could hit home runs. But he's not going to be hitting 20, 30 home runs a year. And it's just, like you said, there needs to be more consistency from both him and Eaton. And I think if you put Cabrera in that 2-hole, and if him and Eaton can sort of get into a rhythm, that offers up a lot for the guys behind them. Who's going to be the third hitter in that lineup? Is it going to be Todd Frazier?
I think it's probably Abreu, and then you get Frazier.
Okay, yeah, that makes so.
But if you have two guys with 350 plus on base percentages coming up for Abreu and Frazier, that's going to be wrong.
That's huge, yeah, and that's why I think he needs to sort. And I'm with Scott. I liked the signing a lot for them. I thought that was a really, really good signing for them, and a little disappointing last year, but I think he's got a chance to bounce back this year.
So we'll see what Cabrera brings, but our 3 and 4 on the list for the Sox were Cabrera and Eaton, and you brought them in to do a job. They did it in the second half, but by that point it was just too late for the Sox, and it's a winnable division. It is a winnable division, and if those guys can give you decent numbers off the top, you're talking about being able to do some damage. All right, number 3 for the Cubs, Kyle effing Schwarber.
The babe.
This is an interesting one. Ben, I'll let you start with this one.
Yeah, I think with him it's going to come down to he's going to be pretty much your left fielder. I know there's the talks of him being a personal catcher for one of the pitchers. I think the guys they were floating around were Hamill and Lackey. Whichever one they pick, I hope they go with the guy who throws the least amount of breaking balls, because that's where Schwarber is going to get burned.
Mm-hmm.
The biggest thing for him is going to be defense. I don't want to sit here and say I don't have any worry about his bat, because you're always going to have pitchers who are going to start figuring guys out. But if he can walk and limit his strikeouts a little bit, I don't think this is a guy who's going to hit 330. I think he's going to hit 260-ish. But I think he's got that 30 to 40 home run potential. But he's got to play decent defense to stay in the lineup. I know the bat's great, but you can't have what you had in that Mets series. Him in left field just constantly taking, I don't want to say that he was taking bad angles, because it's hard to sit here and judge him and say how bad he was. I just don't think he can make the plays you need to make for even an average left fielder at this point. I think he's got to get better there, and I expect him to work on it, and he's probably been working on it, but I think that, and then him catching, you have to keep that bat in your lineup, but at the same time, you can't have him giving up runs in left field like he did in the Mets series. I think he's got to improve there. I think that's where the big question is. I think the bat sticks, no problem. The defense is the biggest question.
Yeah, I'm with Ben on that. He's this high on this list because I agree. He's not going to be a guy that's hitting 300. I highly doubt it. He's going because he's a swing and miss kind of guy. That's just his game. And I think people understand that. He's going to crush home runs. He could probably crush 20, 30, probably closer to 30, I would guess. But it's the fear of him in left field, which I'm sure he's worked on a lot. I don't really care for him as a catcher. I think it's. I don't know if that's stubbornness on his part. I don't know if that's stubbornness on the Cubs' part. I don't know if they truly do believe he can be a catcher, like a full-time catcher. I don't know. I don't see it, and he's struggled with it since. Not that he's been in professional baseball for all that long, but it wasn't even anything he did all that well when he was in the minors. So That's the biggest reason for me is defensively, what can he do? Does he show enough improvement? Because it's not like the Cubs don't have options, and what's Jorge Soler, and it's going to be that mix of how does Joe Madden figure out where all these guys are going to be playing next year.
My big concern for Schwarber is one of my same concerns that I have for Jason Hayward, which is
expectations.
The expectation, right? Like the lasting impression of Schwarber for most people is going to be the bomb on top of the scoreboard against St. Louis. I know for some, there's that picture of the newspaper of him just flat on his back in left field as the ball is dropping because he fell over. But for a lot of people, it's like, man, that guy can hit some massive home runs. And, like any power hitter, if the power's not there, how is he going to handle that adversity? And he struck out 28% of his plate appearances last year. That you want to see that go down. You want to see him hit for contact, but you want to see him do those things without sacrificing power. And I hope that again, the expectations aren't too much for him. And just like Jason Hayward, let him play his game. Hopefully the fans aren't stupid, but as we know, because we live in Chicago and you can flip on 670 to score at any time, the fans here could just be
pure meatball.
Yeah.
I think the biggest thing is they have the manager who there's obviously going to be expectations from the fans. I think they have the manager who can control the expectations internally. You look at what I'm not saying Starlin Castro was an MVP last year, but he definitely turned it on late in the season, and I think that's a big credit to Joe Madden. My big thing is just how he's gonna the second season, you're giving these pitchers, you're giving professionals more tape to look at, what kind of pitches they can't hit. Hopefully they don't develop something like Soriano, just slider away, he's not going to hit it at all. That's what you want to avoid is when there's just one pitch who'll get the guy out, and you're essentially just waiting for a mistake. Like, you just want a professional hitter, that I think he needs to turn into, and I think that's the best way to keep him in the lineup, because you're, for all intents and purposes, you're trying to find a position for a designated hitter is really what it comes down to.
Basically, sure. Yep.
All right, on to number 2, and on the south side, and that's going to be someone we're familiar with as Cubs fans, and that's going to be Todd Frazier. Acquired from the Reds in the offseason. Fills a need for the Sox, another hitter for a team that struggled to hit it at points last year. I like the move for them. Again, the pantry is bare in the minor leagues as far as I can tell for them. So, as always with a Jerry Reinsdorf team, it's win now with players from yesterday. But hey, Matt, Todd Frazier, what?
Yeah, Todd Frazier, I wouldn't say spectacular, but a very, very good first half. He's another one of these guys that it's a tale of two halves with him, and he was trending downward at the end of last year. So the first half, he batted .284, hits 25 home runs, 57 RBIs, and then the second half, he only hits 10 home runs, 32 RBIs, and bats a pretty terrible .220 with a .274 on base. And that's scary. That's something I think you should be worried about if you're a White Sox fan, is what Todd Frazier are you getting? Are you getting two-time All-Star Todd Frazier through a season and a half from 2014 to the first half of 2015? Or are you getting more of the guy that really, really struggled at the end of last year? So that's part of the. I think I like the signing. I think it's a good signing for them. Obviously, if he's the guy that he was at the start or at the first half last year, but it's another one of those things that there's still a bit of a risk with Todd Frazier because you're not sure what you're getting.
I tend to agree with you there, Matt. I mean, for a team that struggled in one half of the season, is that what we're going to see with Todd Frazier? They're expecting him to, be a nice bat in the middle of that lineup. Is he going to be there? I don't know. And if he's not, the good thing is they play on the south side. Nailed it. right?
Yeah.
No pressure on the south side, right? When you only got 9.
No, I think what the biggest thing we have to look at is he's still the best third baseman they've had in 10 years. I mean,
Joe Creedy.
It's not even close. I mean, I think, the extreme bad is what it was at the end of last season for him. I mean, even if you get, between that first half and second half, I mean, that's an impact bat in the lineup. I mean, you look at what they were last year, they've gotten better at third base, even if he has the second half he had last year is still probably better than what the Sox had at third base. I just think, he's a solid player defensively. He's a good player. He's a good defensive third baseman. Offensively, he's solid. I think he's going to be a big improvement. But, yeah, I mean, if you're talking about making a run or anything like that, you need closer to first half Todd Frazier than second half Todd Frazier. Just kind of a funny comparison. We do the similarities on Baseball Reference. Similar batters through age 29. Number 1, Joe Creedy.
Nice.
I just thought that was interesting.
Love it.
But yeah, I mean, he's got his comparables are right up there. I mean, he's got Jose Bautista, Josh Donaldson's in there. I mean, he's got good comps. So I mean, I think he'll be good. I think they'll be all right. They just got to make sure that he doesn't get in one of those really bad slumps. And one thing, you can kind of credit that second half to was that Cincinnati team was awful. They were trading everybody away. I mean, they didn't care about playing baseball. And
all rookies started like the last 74 games or something for them, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah,
it's something crazy like that.
It was bad, and again, the good part with the Sox is he fits into this mysterious 3-year window that they're talking about. If it doesn't work out, he's a guy you can flip for prospects. I think he's still going to have plenty of value.
All right, well, moving back over to the north side, number 2 is Chris Bryant, and he is. Last year he was as advertised, awesome. A professional player, rookie of the year, 8th or 9th in
11th. He was
11th in MVP voting. I mean, really, really solid. But now you want to see him take that leap. I mean, and for lack of a better comparison off the top of my head, I mean, you want to see, you want him to get into that Bryce Harper category. I mean, that's what you want. I mean, that's what the fans are going to want at least. I mean, maybe he's not quite that ceiling, but whew.
Yeah, that's a really high ceiling.
It is a high ceiling, but
I think he's. I mean, I agree that is a very high ceiling, but I also feel like he is a player of that caliber that he has enough talent to get there, but. I mean, that's part of the reason why he's so high on my list, because I think there's that fear, obviously, with anybody who has such a solid rookie year, there's that fear of, does he go into that dreaded sophomore slump?
Oh, and let me just go straight to, there's that fear with any Cubs prospect.
Well, yeah.
Right? I mean, because what Cubs prospect has really worked out ever?
Yeah, but what Cubs prospect had this type of season he had last year?
No, I agree with you. I'm not disagreeing with that. It's just, it's so
There's
hard.
There's something embedded inside of Cubs fans.
Right, it's that eternal doubt where it's just like, yeah, this is bad. Like, are we going to see another good one fall? And the answer should be no, right? I mean, trust the plan, trust Theo. Theo drafted this guy and brought him up at the right time, and he did awesome things and all that kind of stuff. And but
a lot with him to me is similar to like Kyle Schwarber. I think he's going to be a great hitter, but he's got. I mean, he had 199 strikeouts last year. I mean, you gotta cut down on that. I mean,
yeah.
You have to. There's really no way around it. He has to figure out how to cut down on those. I mean, he's gonna strike out. I mean, he's gonna strike out 100. I mean, but 140, 150 times sure is a lot nicer than 199. Mm-hmm. I think defensively, I think he's probably a little bit better than people give him credit for. I'm not saying he's going to win any Gold Gloves anytime soon, but I think he's a lot better. People were talking how, oh God, just put him in the outfield. He's so bad. I mean, he was still a plus I think it was a .6 D-WAR, so slightly above replacement level. So that's fine. That's what you need when you're going to produce what he can do offensively. I just think, like you said, there's the one thing that most Cubs fans aren't counting on is just that natural regression that they're going to have. I mean, Jake Arrieta isn't going to have the season he had last year. Anthony Rizzo, is he going to be able to do the same? Is Chris Bryant going to be able to do the same? I mean, there's going to be a natural regression somewhere. You just hope it's not enough. And the Cubs don't really have a backup plan. I mean, at this point, if Chris Bryant doesn't work out, with Kyle Schwarber, at least you have 3 other outfielders you can play. If Bryant doesn't, what do you have?
What are you doing? Yeah, I mean, are you?
I'm not going to go as far to say like he's going to struggle to the point where they need to bench him, but I mean, it's still his second year. He had a hell of a first year. I hope he's going to keep it up. I think he's going to keep it up. I think the ceiling of Bryce Harper is a little high, but I think long term, I mean, I think you got to be looking 35 homers, 100 RBIs each season for this guy.
Yeah, his 23 season comp, number 1, Danny Tartable. Everybody loves Danny Tartable.
From Seinfeld fame.
Chipper Jones, Edwin Encarnacion, Bobby Thompson, Chris Brown, Billy Williams. So you got some okay names on there, but I'm not saying Chris Bryant's going to be Bryce Harper, but you really hope that the worst case scenario for his career is he's in that notch below Trout and Harper, right? Like
I said, Troy Glaus would be my low end for him.
Right, so we'll see what happens. All right, before we hit number 1 on the south side, Ben, you said you had talked to a couple of Sox fans, and we had Todd Frazier at number 2, and for them, Todd Frazier didn't come up. Who came up for them that isn't on our list?
The one that popped up on both was Carlos Rodon. Most of them had Cabrera and Eaton. One had Abreu. One had Brett Lowry, which I actually thought about putting in.
I debated him as well.
But Carlos Rodon was the one who popped up on both, which in hindsight maybe we should have included him, but I like the guys that we had in there. I just think he's a guy that, again, you talk about what pitching is going to take these guys about as far as they can, and he's sliding into that third role, and he had some great games last year. He had some bad games last year. You just need consistency from him as well. So,
yeah, if he's any good at all this year, I mean that top of the rotation.
I think he's going to be good. It's just you need him to really. He needs he needs better control. He walked a lot of guys last year, so.
But again, though, I mean that's a formidable top of the rotation for the White Sox.
I think they're right up there with anybody as far as their top 3. It's like a lot of teams. It's that 4 or 5 hole that could do them in. So,
Matt, before we get to number 1, was there anybody that that's not on this list that you had?
I believe I had a couple. Let me look real quickly. I'm sorry, I probably should have had that pulled up, but
okay.
Because I know I did not have Adam Eaton on my list. I had Adam LaRoche because I just feel like they have to find a way to figure out what they're doing at the DH just because they have so many guys that can, and they paid LaRoche that big money and stuff, so I think that's an important part. And I actually had Jimmy Rollins on my list because this team, they signed Jimmy Rollins, he was pushing 40, and they already said, yeah, he's in line to be your starting shortstop because this team they have nothing at the shortstop position. So I think there's a lot of pressure on Rollins.
Tyler Saladino.
Well, yeah, but clearly they don't like him enough.
Right. No,
with them wanting to bring in Jimmy Rollins. So it's like I feel like there's already this unnecessary pressure on a guy who was an MVP a decade ago, and it's what I don't know. I didn't like the Jimmy Rollins signing at all, and them immediately saying that this guy, he's our guy there at shortstop.
Yeah, a guy that nobody else clearly wanted.
Yeah.
And he's your opening starter.
The guy I talk to all the time that I played in the fantasy football league on 6 The Score. I don't even know his actual name. We call him Jag. But
shout out to Jag.
All right, Jag.
He's a big White Sox fan, and he was livid about the Rollins signing. And he really wanted the Sox to sign Ian Desmond, which I think he convinced me that was probably the best move for him too. I mean, there's no way anybody's going to convince me that Jimmy Rollins is anywhere near what Ian Desmond can produce. I mean, even in a bad year for Ian Desmond last year is way better than Jimmy Rollins. He's 29. He's, coming off a season where I think he was like a 6 or 7 WAR a couple seasons ago. I mean, that's a guy that would have fit in the middle of that lineup better than Rollins, shored up that position.
And there's still a chance that he at least performs above.
Right.
Like Jimmy Rollins is not giving you a 10-year throwback at 40.
Right. Correct. That's kind of the point. And that goes back to our conversation we had where it was the Sox had a great offseason, but it felt like they were one move short, and maybe Desmond could have been that guy.
And then the one guy that I put on the list and it non-player, and Ben, your immediate reaction was when I put him on the list. Yeah, put him on the list, but I'll tell you what I think of him, and he's bad. It's Robin Ventura, and I really worry that Robin Ventura they're just sticking with him for the sake of sticking with him. Reinsdorf's loyal to his guys.
Just gonna say it's that Reinsdorf thing, and I think it's frustrating. It's got to be frustrating for White Sox fans because I know it's frustrating as a Bulls fan to see a commitment to people even when they're not doing their job at the highest level. And a lot of people will argue that managers don't mean a lot, and I disagree. Look at what Joe Madden did on the north side of town, and it means something. But there's not 30 Joe Maddens hanging around either.
Well, yeah, that's my point exactly. Is I know you're going to sit here and say that managers make a difference. How many managers in baseball do you really think make that big of an impact to a team?
Maybe 3 or 4 in all honesty.
Right. And again,
baseball's your goal is for it to not be a detriment to the team.
Yes.
But and then you're also talking about American League Baseball, which is so much more different than the National League. I mean, so much less to worry about. I mean, as far as when's your pitcher going to be. I mean, he essentially just has to pick a lineup. But at the same time, he has to understand that when something's not working, you need to change it. And last year, I don't know that they had the options to do it. I think I bought into what they did last offseason. I picked them to win, and obviously I was drastically wrong. And people were crying for a change, but what were they going to change? They didn't have anybody on the bench that was going to come in and do any better. That's the only reason why I didn't think Ventura, because I think this team's going to go as far as the players go. And in the National League, I mean, these are proven guys. These aren't guys that you need to hope for anything. I think the players need to figure it out more than Robin Ventura does.
All right. Well, I brought that up because I know we had some offline discussion. I thought it was worthwhile to bring it up. But the number one for both sides of town, the Cubs and the Sox, are the number one pitchers. And you could say John Lester's making the number one money for the Cubs. But your number one guy is Jake Arrieta. And your number one guy for the White Sox is Chris Sale. And I think there's some similarities between the two with where your concern is. Health, obviously. Chris Sale has missed some time. Even though Arrieta hasn't, we saw him start to break down a bit at the end of the year. Right?
And he admitted too much to that last week. I know he was on The Score last week talking to Spiegel and Goff, and he admitted he didn't think his body wasn't prepared to do that, and he admitted to that, which actually sort of surprised me because most guys won't be willing to admit to that, so that's definitely a concern.
Even more so for him because he's a workout warrior.
Yep.
I mean, he's just such a physical freak. But so at the end of the podcast here, let's talk. Let's start on the South side with Chris Sale. As much as we talk about the hitters, last year that team is an abomination without Chris Sale. I mean, Chris Sale was the only thing they kept. It was an abomination, but I mean, it was an abomination that at least every 5 days you'd be like, you know what I need to do? I need to watch White Sox baseball because Chris Sale is on the mound. Man, that guy is good. If this season goes in the tank.
No, they're not trading him.
I know they're not going to. Would you trade him?
Not this year, because I think he's still got. I think he's got a team option through the 18-19 season, so I think he'd be a free agent in 19. So he's still got, 3 or 4 years with him. I wouldn't just yet. I mean, outside of Clayton Kershaw, I think he's the second best pitcher in baseball. I mean, and I think it's by a pretty wide margin, truthfully. I mean, he's one of my favorite pitchers to actually watch pitch. I mean, he's a strikeout machine. We've been talking about for years how he's, just one pitch is that arm's going to go, that weird delivery. But you know what? Yeah, he's missed a few starts here and there, but he's had 30, 26 and 31 starts in his 4 full seasons. He's hit 200 innings twice, just missed it in 2012. He had 192. I mean, this is a guy, in his 4 seasons starting, he's never finished lower than 6th on the Cy Young list. He finished 3rd, 4th, 5th, and 6th, and was finished 19th in MVP last year, a 4-time All-Star. He's an unbelievable pitcher, and if anything happens to him, if he's not, I fully expect him to be as consistent as he always is, but if anything happens to him, it's over for the White Sox. That's how I feel. I mean, I'm one of those guys I'm very much about hitters are more important than pitchers, except maybe when it comes to the postseason. I mean, you can survive. In most cases, if a pitcher goes down, you can sort of stay afloat because they do pitch every 5th day, but they rely so much on Sale. If anything happens to him, if he misses any significant time, I mean, that's it. I think he's that good. He's that impactful. It's just where I'm at with Chris Sale. Like I said, I think outside of Kershaw, he's easily my favorite pitcher in baseball.
And it's that domino effect too, right? Because you expect Chris Sale every time he goes out to pitch 7-8 innings.
He's your slump buster pitcher. You should never have more than a 4-game losing streak when you have Chris Sale in your rotation, because you expect him, if you're on a 4-game losing streak, he needs to come out and pitch his balls off, which he usually does. It's just right. The offense needs to score runs too.
But the thing for the Sox though is with Sale, like if he's not in your lineup, right? Now your bullpen gets taxed and your long relievers get taxed, and I mean it is a domino effect. And as much as we want to sit here and look at the other 2 guys for the Sox, if Sale's not there, it's not like on the north side where if Arrieta goes down, you at least know you've got John Lester, right? And you know what you're getting with John Lester. The other 2 guys are kind of young. You're going, if Sale's down, this is really bad for the Sox. Matt, I know I cut you off. Go ahead, jump in.
I was just going to sort of play off the fact that for as well as Sale has pitched in his career as a starter, and I think there's got to be this sense of fear amongst not only the Sox organization but White Sox fans that his best years are being wasted on a bad team.
Yep.
And he's been so consistent. He's pitched so well, and you look at his ERA, and he's 3.05, 3.07, 2.17, 3.41, and he's completely his consistency is terrific. And then one interesting thing too this year, he's been wanting to gain weight because he's a gangly dude. He's 6'6", and he's listed at 180. And then there was an article out earlier this week, or maybe it was last week, that he's up to 190 pounds, and he's been eating. He wants to get to 200 pounds, but there's that sort of then. That question comes into play. Is Chris Sale at 20 pounds heavier than what he was listed at a year ago? Does that change? I mean, how much does that change that for that guy? Mm-hmm. And it's interesting. I understand the need and the desire to get bigger for a guy of that size. I mean, he's so tall that you need to sort of have that build to you a little bit, I guess, because there is that fear of maybe that's what some of his injuries have come from, is being such a thinner, lankier kind of guy. And also I thought it was pretty interesting too that he went through this big thing about how he loves pizza and he loves tacos. So if I didn't like Chris Sale enough as I already was, I love this guy, because anybody who's advocating for more pizza and more tacos, he's right up my alley.
So I think the bottom line for the Sox and why he's most important, I think we're all in agreement. Any of the other guys on the list, you could survive them being gone somewhat. Mm-hmm. I think Sale, not only what he brings every 5th day, but he's that alpha dog in the clubhouse. He makes the train run, and I think if he were to go down, if he were to slump, you would see that just affect the entire team. And now let's jump over to the north side. And, man, are we freaking spoiled that in Chicago right now, we have 2 of maybe the 5 best pitchers in baseball.
Easily 2 of the 5. It might even be like 3 or 4, but
right. I mean, you've got. I mean, who are the top 5 right now? You got Kershaw, Greinke, Arrieta, Sale. I mean,
you're pretty much right there. I mean, you got.
So you got some guys. There are some guys, and we are spoiled because on the north side we got Arrieta, and I think the fear that I have is the same one you guys have with Arrieta. Is he was amazing. He was really, really, really good 2 years ago. He was amazing last year. What is the third year of this for a guy who, a few years ago looked like he was just going to be a career number 5 minor leaguer and came to Cubs, resurrected, unbelievable pitcher, and now we're relying on him to be our best guy, right? What if he's not? What does that do? What's the domino effect there? Ben, let's go to you.
Well, I think, again, this is what I mentioned earlier, is that natural regression that he's going to have. I mean, he's not going to have a 1.77 ERA again. I mean, it's not going to happen. He's not going to have that run he had at the end of last year. How big of a difference is it if he has a 2.5 or a 2.6 ERA? I mean, you're talking a full run higher, yet still a very, very, very good ERA. But, I mean, what does that do to your team? And I think this is what I go back to with the natural regression that they're going to have is they won 97 games with a pitcher like this. He's not going to do that again. So what difference does that make? Is that a few losses, a few less wins, a few more losses? And it scares the crap out of me that we're relying on him so much because, he's not that proven. It's basically been a little over, a little under 2 years where he's been this good. I mean, it's hard for me to sit here and say that he's going to do that again, but he's put in the time, he puts in the effort, like you said, with his working out and stuff like that. I mean, his body's in great shape, but he's not going to – is he a guy that you can count on to get that 210, 220, 230 innings? Because we saw what happened to him in the playoffs where he hit a wall and he hit it hard and the Cubs can't recover. I mean, even with the adding Lackey and hoping that Hamill and Hendricks are going to be healthy, if you're not getting number 1 stuff from him for a season, I mean, you're in a world of hurt because there's nothing else behind what they currently have.
Well, and let's step back for a sec. Arrieta in the playoffs, we talk about him almost as though he was bad, but he made 3 starts. The Pittsburgh start was amazing. But he got hit kind of hard in that game. The St. Louis start was and it was a bad first inning against the Mets, but then he settled down and was okay the rest of the way. But that was the difference between him being amazing and very good. And is very good enough for the Cubs. Matt?
And and that's the question. And there's also that thing that's built in that we've talked about other players, that there's the expectations. And now that Jake Arrieta has won a Cy Young, personally, I don't think that's something that affects Jake Arrieta. Just given everything we've heard from him, the way he talks about things, the way he prepares. But I think it's unrealistic, like Ben said, to expect him to come into the 2016 season and have a 1.77 ERA. I mean, that's just unrealistic. It's the year he had last year is probably one of the best pitching seasons of all time. I don't think many people would argue with that. And it's the thing of, was he hampered so much when he was in Baltimore by the way they wanted him to throw and the way that they wanted him to be as a pitcher? Or should Chris Bosio get all this credit for being this sort of miracle worker with this pitching staff and what he's been able to do?
The pitcher whisperer.
Yeah, I mean, it's hard to argue with some guys. I mean, you even saw Jason Hamill at his peak credit Bosio for what he was doing. So, there's expectations, I think, placed on Lester or Arrieta, that people are going to be disappointed if he has a 2.5 ERA like he had in 2014, and that's a hell of a year to have a 2.53 ERA in 25 starts. I mean, that's top level stuff, but there's so much high expectations for a guy who wants to exceed all that. I mean, he spoke last week, like I said, on The Score, and he made a comment that that got probably all the meatballs going when he said there was not a hitter in Major League Baseball that he fears. Which you like that confidence, but at the same time, it's I'm not going to bet against him by any means, but I think expectations, just like a lot of guys in this league, have to be lower just a touch because pitchers don't pitch like that year after year.
I will say the one thing I'm looking forward to, this is the first list that we're doing where I'm excited in July, only a few months from now, to go back and revisit it.
Mm-hmm.
We got a couple of lists coming up here between this. We got an MLB preview podcast coming up. We've got an NFL draft podcast list that we're going to do. We're going to do a list for the NBA and NHL playoffs. We got some lists that we're actually going to, a few weeks down the road, be able to go and look back on. And I think it's going to be really interesting to listen to what we're talking about now and go, yep, nailed it, missed it, nailed it. This guy turned out to be way more important than we ever thought. And, that's the beauty of baseball, though, right?
It's true. I mean, baseball is so unpredictable. Like most sports.
Unpredictable, but predictable all the same,
Yeah,
right?
Yeah. It's a weird combination.
Yeah, really good stuff. So, closing thoughts on this list before we end it for the night. Ben, anything? Oh, Matt,
Sorry.
No, you were excited. Go.
No, I was just going to say this list, if nothing else, has gotten me even more excited for baseball. And honestly, even on both sides of town. The three of us were Cubs fans, but I'm really, really curious to see what the White Sox season is like. And because I do think they made a lot of good moves. I do think they're a much better team than what they were a year ago. And they've got some talent there. So I think it's going to be interesting on both sides of town. Obviously, I'm really looking forward to Cubs baseball, but I'm also looking forward to White Sox baseball, and this list has amped me up now that baseball's only a couple weeks away.
Yeah, my closing thought would be, I wonder if the Sox will have an itchy trigger finger on Ventura. If they start out super slow again, if the mistakes that should be corrected in spring training aren't corrected at the start of the season.
Well, you had the rumor with that originally. They signed Ricky Renteria as the bench coach, and rumor was they offered it to Sandy Alomar first, and he said no because he didn't want to take over for Robin Ventura because I guess they're friends. So there was sort of some rumors or internal discussions, if you will, that was kind of the deal is, hey, look, we want you to be our bench coach and be prepared to take over if we struggle.
Yep.
At this point, I think 2 years in a row making the moves they made, if they get off to a bad start, I don't know how Robin survives. But
yeah, I think they're going to have a quick trigger finger, and I think they have to. I think they've put together a team in a bad division that can compete, and if they're not all over that and going, we're 20 games in, we're 6-14, 7-13. We really should be better than that.
Well, I think it'll be a little longer than that.
It might be, but you'd think that at that point you're 6-14. The conversation's going, how much longer are we going to let this thing get away from us? Because the old saying is, you can't win the division in April, but you can't lose it. Ben, do you have a closing thought to wrap us up here?
No, I think I like the lists. I think you could, a couple guys you could flip-flop, but I really liked the guys that were on our list. I think, like Matt said, I'm excited for baseball. I think on both sides of town, like I said, Chris Sale is one of my favorite pitchers to watch. Jose Abreu, I think, is one of the better hitters to watch. He's borderline must-watch at-bat type guy. But yeah, I think it's going to be fun on both sides of the town. Obviously, the Cubs, for how excited I am for them, they make me nervous at the same time. So
for sure. All right, so be sure to subscribe on iTunes, rate us, review us on iTunes. That would be awesome. We're on Stitcher. You can listen to us there. Check out the WordPress. We'll have some articles going up this week for all kinds of different things that are happening. And be sure to tell your friends. Get us out there. We like when we have more listeners. We really enjoy feedback when we get it from our listeners. So be sure to give us that. So for Matt Urich and Ben Russo, I'm Scott Sternal. Thanks again, as always, for listening. We'll be back next week with some more interesting sports talk.